Welcome to the business case practice. First, let's talk about what we're going to cover in this aspect of the course. In this aspect of the course, I'm going to explain the purpose of the business case practice itself. I'm going to describe the relationship between business case and the principles. We're going to explain the purpose of key management products that are relevant to the business case practice. We're going to define key concepts relating to the practice, such as outcome, output, benefit, disbenefit, and business objectives. We're also going to provide guidance for effective management of business case throughout its life cycle. And of course, we're going to describe the PRINCE2 techniques for business case practice. Now let's break that down. What you will learn at the end of this particular part of the course is we would have explored and understand the business case practice itself. You will know the key concepts related to business justification. You will understand the benefit management approach and how to use the business case management process. Let's start with the purpose of what a business case practice is. The purpose of the business case practice is to establish the mechanism to judge whether the project is and remains desirable, viable, and achievable. And what do we mean by those key things? Desirable. Over the course of a project, we want to make sure that the project is still needed. It still serves a purpose within the organization business strategy. That the objective or what we're trying to deliver is something that we still need within the organization. In terms of viability, we want to make sure that it is still possible. It can still be done. It can be delivered. And in terms of achievability, we want to make sure that the benefits, the reason why we're doing this project, is still present. The benefit was stated in the business case can still be done. At each point in our business case, we will need to update it. For example, at the end of a stage boundary, we will update our business case. And then we'll ask ourselves those key questions. Is it still viable? Can it still be done? Is it still achievable? Will I still get my benefits? Is it still desirable? Do I still want it? All the answers must be yes. If at any point the answer is a no, then we will stop the project. Now, let's consider the key relationships between output, outcomes, and benefit. The output is the purpose, is what you're delivering within the project itself. This is your end product. This is your project product description, your PPD. Once you've delivered the output in that project, that output will then give the organization new capabilities. Remember, the organization is creating this output so that they will be able to use it. So the new capability is what's going to enable the change. That's the outcome. So for example, you created a new widget that makes you work faster. The widget has been created, but the capability is that you're able to now use it to improve the effectiveness of your team. The outcome is that you are now able to produce more widgets. So we can see the link between output, the widget you created, which led to improved capabilities, which now led to the change you desired. However, that change itself, the fact that you're able to produce more widget, is not enough. We need to measure how much more widget you're able to produce, and that's where benefits comes in. Benefit is measurable. It's to measure the change between the as-is state and the new target state or the new current state. But as with any benefit, we also have to consider the sacrifice, which we call the disbenefits. So disbenefits are things that are certain, they're negative, and they are a direct consequence of the output that we've just created. So for example, let's say as a result of this widget, we now need an extra person to operate. Or as a result of this widget, even though we're producing more, our level of defect has risen. So we always consider disbenefits and benefits together. So if I consider what I'm going to get out of this, those are my benefit, the measurable things, I have to do it as in opposition to my disbenefit. What am I giving up? For example, let's say I wanted to install a new Wi-Fi into my house. The benefit is I'll get from 5 megabytes to 5 gigabytes to let's say 10 gigabytes of speed. That's good. But I also have to consider during that period of time, what am I going to be giving up? If during that period of time, I won't have any Wi-Fi in my home for 5 days, that's disbenefit. Because that's certain. That is a negative consequence. And it's because I want to install this new Wi-Fi. So I have to weigh the two against each other. And if the disbenefits outweigh the benefits, I should stop. That means I've chosen the wrong option, or I've decided to implement that option at the wrong time. Of course, we hope that the outcome itself will lead to the achievement of the business objectives. So the stated objective, which is we want to increase productivity, we want to make sure that we produce more widgets, this is the outcome that we want. Just to recap, output is what we created. That what we created is providing us with new capabilities, new skill sets, new opportunities. And that opportunities, we're using it to create new outcome, which is our change. We're going to measure that outcome in benefits, which is to quantify just how much of a change we've had from when we started to now that we've got this new output being used. We're also going to consider the disbenefits. What are the things that we're giving up? So what are the things that are certain, they're negative, and they're a direct consequence of this output or of us using this output? We're also going to consider whether the outcome has actually led to the business objective that we wanted. Are we where we thought we were going to be? When it comes to the business case lifecycle, in terms of the project mandate, when we're talking about startup or before startup, we said that there is a project mandate that triggers startup. The purpose of the project mandate is basically for the sponsoring organization to provide us with a general overview of what they want, as well as the constraints. And we also said they will set things like the project level tolerance. The project mandate will provided by the business will set expectations and constraints. Those expectations and constraints will go into our project brief when we create our outline business case. If you remember, we created our first business case in starting up a project process, which we'll call the outline business case. This will be included in our project brief. Later on, when we get to the initiate the project process, we said we're going to take that outline business case and we're going to update it. So it's going to become a full business case or detailed business case. All the heading of our business case is still going to be the same, except we have more information than we did when we were in the starting up a project process. So that's the general life cycle of it. By the end of initiation, we would have baselined our business case. From that point onward, we're merely going to be updating it as we go through the stages. So that's the general life cycle of the business case. In startup, you would have done your outline business case, and in initiating a project process, you will have a full business case, which will then be updated as we go through. It is important that when you're dealing with business case, that you align it with your business objectives and the tolerances. For example, let's say you have a tolerance for the benefit, stating that what you get out of this in terms of financial benefit must be at least 10%. You need to make sure that as you update those business case, that those benefits are still likely to happen. You also need to consider the trade-offs that you're giving up. For example, we talked about this benefit earlier. The disbenefits are your trade-offs. Those are things that are certain, they're negative, and they're a direct consequence of what you're doing. Other things that you might need to consider when you're establishing justification includes things like your major risk, to see whether or not there is anything in there that might be worth considering as to whether or not you should consider this project. Of course, you should always look at all the 7 aspects of project controls. So, let's have a look at how we develop a business case through the project lifecycle. The first step is to develop a business case. And we will develop a business case. We start in starting up a project process where we develop the outline. Then we will complete our development of a business case in initiating a project process. By the end of the initiation stage, we have a full business case, fully developed. We're also going to make sure we continue to check our business case. We're going to check our business case during stages. So while you're in a stage as a project manager continues to capture risks and issues, let's say you're in controlling the stage, as you start to capture issues and risk, you will always have a look at how does this impact my business case. So we continue to check our business case during the project. And of course, the next step after we check it, so now we've gone from develop to check, that's the next step. And we're checking the impact of the project on our business case within the stage. Then we need to maintain the business case. And maintaining the business case comes at the end of each stage. At the end of each stage, we need to collate everything that's happened in that business case. We need to then present it to the project board so that they have enough information to make a decision about whether or not we should continue with the project. So far, we developed the business case. We know that we checked the business case in stage. And at the end of the stages, we're going to maintain the business case so that we can continue to the next level. The final thing is we're going to confirm our benefits. And at the end of each stage, it is our role to, after we've maintained it, we've put everything there, to confirm whether those benefits are still going to happen. So that's the general life cycle of our business case. We develop it, we check it, we maintain it, and then we confirm it. So in pre-project, you have your outline business case. In initiation, you have your full business case. Within the subsequent delivery stages, you're checking that that business case is still viable, achievable, and desirable. At the end of each stage, you need to maintain that business case and collate everything you've learned so far. Once you've maintained the business case, you need to send it back to the project board to confirm that the benefits are still there. And at the end of each stage, you'll be confirming that your benefits are there. So that's the life cycle of a business case. And of course, once you finish the project, you will then start confirming the benefits as well in real life, using the benefit management approach. When it comes to documenting the business case justification, some of the things you might need to also consider are things like your estimated costs versus your expected benefits. If the cost of it is too high compared to what you would get in return, then that might say that that's a bad business case. Of course, your expected benefit itself, as we often say, nothing is certain until it happens. The expected benefit should be offset by associated risk. There are still uncertainties around it. Not everything you state are going to happen. So it's important not to just throw a number out there and stick to it dogmatically, but rather to look at it and say, okay, what's the probability? What are the uncertain areas where this might not happen? You also need to consider how and when your benefit is going to actually occur. So when you look at those together, if the cost matches what you're going to get in return, it might be a good idea to do that project. But if you come to a conclusion that actually the cost is too low, or the cost simply is not worth it, then you might decide you don't need to do it. There are some key management products that you need to be familiar with when dealing with a business case practice. The first one is the project brief. And we're aware that the project brief essentially is like a folder that encapsulates the major products or the major documentation that we created in starting up a project process. One of that major product that goes into our project brief is our business case. So outline business case goes into the project brief. We also know that the business case itself will continue to be refined when we get to initiating a project process. And of course, once we've refined our business case, this new business case will leave the project brief and it will go into our project initiation document inside the initiating a project process. When we are refining our business case in initiating a project process, there is an output. So another document is created as a result of this. That output is called the benefit management approach. The benefit management approach is designed, basically, think of it this way. If the business case is intended to check whether the project remains viable, achievable, and desirable from start, think of it as starting up, to closing a project process. From the start of the project to the end of the project, till you create your output. Once your project finishes, that's the end of your business case. However, the purpose of a project is not just to create a product. The purpose of a project is to get benefits. So you're going to need a document that will follow the product you've just created, the output, from its inception, when you go live, all the way till it becomes obsolete. And that document is called the benefit management approach. The benefit management approach is created in initiating a project process. And as you go through the project, you will continue to update this. This will include things such as what benefits will accrue, who's going to check the benefit, how long they're going to check the benefit for, at what interval they're going to check the benefit for. So you continue to update this document until the end of the project. Once the project is finished and all the other documents are closed and archived, the benefit management approach is not closed. The benefit management approach is going to be attached to the output, and it will go into business as usual so that they can use it to actually get the benefits that was promised in the business case. You also have a sustainability management approach. As part of our many organizations' commitments, we want to make sure that whatever we create is good for the environment, that we are having a positive impact in the environment. So the sustainability management approach is a document that is intended to basically see how we're going to ensure over the course of the product's life cycle that we are getting good environmental impact. So for example, if our intention is to reduce, let's say, emission by 12% over the course of 5 years, the sustainability management approach will allow us to follow that and make sure that we actually have actions in place, we have reviews in place to ensure those things are being done. So those are the key management products when it comes to business case practice. As I said, let me define the benefit management approach. This is defined as, the approach defines the management actions that will be put in place to ensure that the project outcomes are achieved and to confirm that the project benefits are realized. So like I said, we start this work in initiating a project process where we start to add all these actions. What do we need to actually do to make sure the benefits are achieved? Who's going to do it? When are they going to do it? What should they expect to see at that point? How long are they going to do it for? At what interval is it going to be? So all those things are captured in here so that when the product goes live and the output is created, this springs into action to measure precisely those things and to ensure that the promises in the business case are kept. Another thing is, of course, in terms of sustainability management approach, it's the achievement of project sustainability performance targets. There's about 17 of them based on the UN sustainability targets. And this document will tell us the actions, the reviews, and the controls that will be put in place to make sure these things happen. We live in a world where we're far more conscious about our impact on the environment as human beings. And most people want to make an impact or want to make sure that we're not causing further harm. So sustainability management approach has become something quite important to organizations, not just organizations, even consumers. Consumers want to know that while you're building a project, just as you're thinking about digital management approach and GDPR, you're also actually implementing sustainability from the ground up. Applying the principles. The obvious one is, of course, ensure continued business justification. This is to tell us that in a business case, of course, you want to review the business case. You want to maintain the business case throughout the life cycle. You may have heard of a concept called sunk cost effect or gambler's dilemma. In a PRINCE2 project, we do not follow this. We do not believe in sunk cost effect. Sunk cost effects is the idea that past investment is used to justify continued investment. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you are doing a project and the budget for the project is 80,000 and you've spent 60,000 of that money. So you only have 20,000 left. Then you read the newspaper one day and you found out that the government has changed the regulations. And that means that your project is now obsolete. At that point, you might go to your business case and realize that there is no further justification to continue. But the sunk cost effect is the idea that because I already spent £60,000, let's finish the project. We're almost done. However, in the business case practice, we don't do this. A project will survive on its own merit. If we review our business case at any point and we determine that either it's no longer viable, it's no longer desirable, it's no longer achievable, the rule is we stop it. No ifs, no buts. We don't determine that, let's just keep going. It's already started. We don't do that. That's part of our ensure continued business justification. Each project will survive on its own merits, subject to constant maintenance and review throughout its life cycle. Of course, define roles and responsibilities. We need to assign accountability for management of the business case. Generally, it is the job of the PM to update the business case. As issues and risks and things happen, it is the job of the business case to check the business case. Basically, it develops the business case. The project manager develops the business case. They check it, they maintain it, they confirm, they make sure the benefits are still there. But the person who's accountable for the business case, who needs to make sure that those business cases are still viable, desirable, and achievable, is the executive. The executive must make sure the business case is still a good one. They must ensure that justification is still valid. Of course, tailor to suit. You can reduce the level of formality or the level of controls for developing the business case for smaller or less complex projects. Now, those are the main things when it comes to the business case. Before I go to the overview, I just want to take the opportunity to go through what content we expect to see in our outline business case and our full business case when developing a business case. So, give me a second and I will write all those things on the board while I explain it to you. So, We're going to look at the content of a business case. So if you wanted to develop your own business case or you wanted to write a business case, what are the key things that are there and what is the purpose of each one? Let's start with what we call options. On a business case, you will always have a minimum of 2 options. The initial option that was already chosen for you in the project mandate when they sent it down. This is the reason why you're doing the project. This is what the PPD is based upon, and this is what the output is. So your main option in your business, in your project mandate. So the main option. But a business case is not just a foregone conclusion that we've chosen an option, let's just do a business case on that. In a business case, we're always going to have at least another option. So you'll have a minimum of 2 options, which is the idea of do nothing. And you might be wondering, why even start a project if you want to consider the idea of doing nothing? The reason is, if we go through all the benefits and everything of our main option, sometimes it might be a better idea just to do nothing. You might find that it costs you more to act than to wait, or that option is not the best option for you. You may have another option which we call do the minimum. So you might find out that the full suite that you wanted to engage in the initial option is not a good idea. But if we leave this do nothing option just hanging around, it's like a Damocles sword, always hovering above our head. We're not really sure or committed to our main option. So the next thing we want to do is to consider what we call reasons. Reasons has nothing to do with your main option. Ignore that for now. Reasons is about stating all the reason why, so let me write it, reasons why do nothing is a terrible idea. So before we even proceed to anything else, we want to say, okay, all right, I know you have this idea of let's just stay still, let's not do the project, let's just continue as we are. Now, what are the reasons why we can't do that? And you will list every single reason why that is a terrible idea. For example, let's say HS2. What's the reason why we can't afford to do that? Well, the current infrastructure is overwhelmed. People are in need of faster travel. So all the reasons why it's a terrible idea to stay still. Every other country is moving forward. UK infrastructure is collapsing. So you list everything down. Anything you can think of. Then we're going to consider, once we have all our reasons why you can't do nothing, then you have to consider what we call expected benefit. Now that we've considered the reasons why we cannot just stick around and do nothing, we need to consider the expected benefit. And these are the reasons why we need to do the benefit of our main option. So the reason is linked to this, to do nothing. The expected benefit is linked to the main option. So benefits needs to be measurable. So we need to make sure that we have to state all the good reasons why if we do this, we're going to get, let's say, for example, we're going to increase sales by 20%. We're going to increase productivity by 30%. But benefits needs to be measurable. And we need to consider all the benefits of our main option. Once we have the benefits sorted, then we need to consider our expected disbenefit. Expected disbenefits are things that are negative, certain, and they're a direct consequence of what we are doing. So this is different from risk. So this is not a risk. This is a trade-off. If I do A, I have to give up B. Basically, think of it like you can't have your apple and eat it too. So the key thing here, once we've listed all the negative and certain things that will happen as a result of making or employing this main option, we have to consider the two together. So expected benefit versus expected disbenefit. If your expected disbenefit is way more than your expected benefit, then you've chosen the wrong option. If the trade-off is more than what you're going to get in return, that's a terrible deal. And you need to go back to your drawing board and find a better option. But assuming that at this point in time, everything still looks good, everything is still going okay, you're happy with how things are going, then you need to consider the next thing, which is your time scale. When it comes to time scale, there are two main time scale you're looking at. What we call the project life cycle and what we call the product life cycle. You want to be able to clearly understand how long is it going to take from start of this project to finish. So that's your project life cycle. If we're in startup, we're going to go through the initiation stage, we're going to go through subsequent stage, and we're going to end up in closing a project process. And at that point, I will have my output. So this is my output. And that is referred to as a project life cycle. Then I need to consider another time scale, and that is the product life cycle. So from the moment from live to obsolete, from the moment that product goes live to the moment it becomes obsolete or is replaced or is no longer needed, how long is that going to take? The reason for this is I want to know how long I'm going to be able to get the benefit for, how long am I going to be able to use it for, and to see whether the return on investment or the rate of return is good enough for what I'm actually spending time on. You can imagine, for example, that whenever a new phone comes out and you are making the phone cases for that, the product life cycle is very short. Because while you might sell a lot of those cases in the first few months of a new releases, by the time the next iteration comes out, very few people are in demand of that product. And by the third year, you're probably barely selling any of them. So product life cycle is important. Once we understand the time scale, we're going to go to the next point. After time scale, the next process is to look at costs. We know how long it's going to take to complete the project. We also know how long we're going to have the product for to get those benefits. So now let's explore costs. Again, there are two costs that we're looking at here. The first one is what we call the project costs, and the second one is the ongoing maintenance. Let's have a look at that. Let's start with the project costs. With the project cost, we want to understand how long is it going to take us from start of the project till we deliver a product. How much is it going to cost? From start to finish, how much should I prepare for? Now, the ongoing maintenance is to look at once the product goes live, how much is it going to cost me to upkeep it, to keep it running in order to get those benefits? As the saying goes, if you're going to milk a cow, you need to feed the cow. So how much hay does the cow actually eat? Because sometimes you can get something cheap, but the cost might be enormous. So you need to be very aware of that going forward so you can make an informed decision. So, two costs. During the project life cycle, how much do I need? During the product life cycle, how long will it need? Just to recap a little bit. So far, we've covered the options, where we said we had two options, at least a minimum of two options. The main option that the business case is based on, and at least the idea of do nothing. Now, we said we go to reasons. And the purpose of reason is to come up with all the reasons why it's a terrible idea to do nothing. All the reasons why we can't stay in the current state. Then we move from there to expected benefits. And the expected benefit is focusing on our main option. And we're saying we want to understand all the good things that we will get as a result of implementing this main option. And we said that because this is benefit must be measurable. Then we want to understand the side effect of this main option. And so therefore we considered the expected disbenefit. We define this as something that is certain, negative, and is a consequence of what we have of this main option. Then from there, we had a look at the time scale and we broke those down into two, the project life cycle and the product life cycle. We wanted to know how long it's going to take from the start to finish of the project. And we also want to know once the product is produced, how long am I going to have to use it before it becomes obsolete? Now we came to costs, and we also want to understand two types of costs. How much is it going to cost to deliver the product? So we want to know the project costs. And then the second cost we wanted to know was our ongoing maintenance. Basically, once we deliver the product, how much is it going to cost me to keep it running? Now that we have that, we need to consider our major risks. Major risk is not every single risk in a project. Major risks are risks that are big enough that should they happen, it could jeopardize the rationale for the whole project itself. These are risks that we put in the business case so that the project executive can have a good visualization of it. We want him to be aware of what's going on to keep an eye on this. For example, the Brexit was a major risk for many people. And those are the things you want to put in, the things that should they happen, or maybe a new regulation is coming out, maybe a new law is coming out, things that could really, maybe the finance of it is not certain. So anything that could jeopardize this project, you want to put in here. So that the risk owner for this is your business, is your project executive. Once you've listed out all your major risks, and of course, don't forget that they will have to compare this with their tolerance. So if this outweighs what the organization is willing to accept, they may decide they don't want this project. Once you have that, you want to consider your investment appraisal. The idea behind investment appraisal is to try and figure out whether this is worth investing in financially. You want to consider things like your rate of return, your return on investment, and see whether or not it's a good idea financially to invest your money in this way. Once you have all of this, your business case is almost ready. And the final thing you need to do is what we call your executive summary. The executive summary is basically, as it states, to summarize the business case in a way that your executive can basically grasp what you stated. So basically put it in a way that they can easily understand. So you've summarized, okay, these are the options that you have. These are the reasons why we decided to do nothing was a terrible idea. These are the benefits that you're going to get. Here are your disbenefits. These are the time scales that we're looking at. This is the cost, this is the major risk, and these are your investment appraisal. Now, at the end of this, the project executive should have enough information to be able to determine whether this project is viable, achievable, and desirable. So those are the key things that goes into your business case. And looking at what we've just explained, you should be able to we'll have an exercise later, but you should be able to have a look at it and be able to construct one yourself. Let us review what we've learned so far. By this point, you should know the purpose of the business case practice. You should understand concepts such as output, outcome, benefits, and capabilities. You should understand the management of the business case through the project lifecycle. And you should understand the management product that supports the business case.